All right, so in this lesson, we'll start to set up our initial pose for our character. This is kind of like the hero pose where she'll be standing before she does whatever movement she'll be doing after that. So we'll finally get to utilize the rig that we just made, and we'll hop into Cinema and start doing that. So the first thing that we can do is actually set up our camera. And that's basically the angle that we sort of want to pose our character in, because it doesn't really matter if her pose looks good from this direction if our camera is placed somewhere around here. So it's always kind of good to settle these sorts of things before we get into posing an animation. And if we aren't happy with that camera placement, we can of course move it around later, but it's just good to kind of set up these things before you get too far into the actual stages of animation. So before we actually create our camera, I'll go ahead and create a null. So this will kind of be the origin point for our camera. And you'll see why this is so handy once I actually drop that in there. But I'll go ahead and create a camera by pressing the camera icon here. So I'll create that. That will automatically pop up where we had our perspective view. So it popped up where we had our default camera when we pressed the icon. So if I hop back in there, that's where the camera will be. So we'll actually want to drop our camera into our null. And like we always do, we'll want to zero out all of these parameters like this. But we can actually move out our camera in the Z axis. So we'll do that. So we'll move it out way further like this. And we can hop into the camera. And instead of actually just moving around like this, like we have been the entire time, I want to have our camera's transformation zeroed out in everything except for the Z axis and kind of control the angle from our null here. So for example, obviously I want the camera to be a bit further up. I also kind of want to view her from this sort of angle, kind of. And I'm immediately kind of noticing that I want a much longer lens for our camera. This is completely up to your preferences or mine. I kind of want to be viewing our character as if we're zooming in on a small piece of object. If you were to, for example, set your lens to a super wide lens and then zoom in on her like this, she will appear massive, like a really big statue. That's not what I want with my design, so I'll just set it to a super tele lens that will zoom in really far. But if I just go ahead and zoom this out like this, this is the kind of perspective that I want. And now you're getting to see some super crazy stuff happening with our geometry. And that is just because we are so far away from our character right now. You can see our camera is so far away. So what we are seeing is basically some clipping going on with our geometry. And to change this setting, we can come into our project settings. So I'll hit Control D. And in display here, we can set the view clipping from medium to large. We'll see what that does. Yeah, that helps. I'll actually set it to huge because we are so far away from our character. And once we've done that, we'll just head out of here and go back to our camera. And we can actually go ahead and scale up our ground just a bit. We will be making this infinite background, but we'll just scale it up for now, just so we can keep going with this. And I'll set our camera here at the bottom. I'll name it camera. And we can actually go ahead and like play with this and rotate it around, see what kind of results we get. I do really like viewing her from a super flat angle, so we kind of get this very illustrative perspective. I'll try and set this to like 0.75, 0.8 maybe even, something like this. If you are into, that kind of design, it could also be cool to make her in like a 3/4 view. But yeah, I kind of like this sort of angle that I'm trying to get. So I have it set to -25 in the rotation age here. And I think that will do for now. We can, as I said, go ahead and change this if we feel like this angle doesn't work for us. But I feel like we see our character from a nice, like very illustrative perspective now with the super long lens that we have. So with our camera setup, if I want to, for example, come out of the camera view and like edit our pose and stuff like we will want to do, I don't want to hop in and out of the camera like this all the time. So what I like to do is set up one of our 4 split views to act as the perspective view. So I usually change this top perspective to the perspective where I can like move around and work within the viewfinder, kind of like we've been doing this entire time. So to do that, we can just come up here to camera and we'll change it from projection from top to perspective. So now we're kind of viewing it as a perspective view like we've been doing before. And I want to change the display type to garage shading like that. Perfect. So now So now you can kind of see that if we do like our edits here, if we, for example, select our, as you can see, now it's super hard to select one of our controllers here. This is why we made our little layer thing here. But if I do go ahead and edit things, you know, all of this will correlate to our camera view. So yeah, I kind of like this way of working. And if you want to have the top view, you can change one of these ones to top if you'd like. I currently don't need it, so I'll just keep it as it is. But we will want to turn off the deformer and field displaying in this view, because this is really obstructing our view. But yeah, like that, I think I'm happy. So before we actually start moving things around, we can go ahead and head into our layers here, and we'll lock everything. And also I'll hit unfold all, so all of our objects are visible here, but then I'll turn off the ones that we don't want to see. So now we only see the objects that we're gonna edit for our pose. Great. So the first thing that we can do with the pose, I think, is just to place the sword within her hand. So the first thing I'll do is just rotate her arm up a bit like this. And I think I'll actually also move it out just a tad from her body, because I don't feel like it's sticking out enough on this side. And in this case, I mean, it doesn't really matter if it's super symmetrical. We won't really be viewing her from a symmetrical angle anyways, but yeah, something like that is all right, I think. And I'll also go ahead and rotate our forearm. So if I, for example, want to twist our arm like this, I would recommend doing it on the forearm instead of the hand, because we will want to kind of isolate certain movements like this movement, so we don't kind of ruin the coordinates by twisting it like this and also having it twist like this. It will kind of make our keyframing a lot more complicated. So if I want to twist the arm, I'll kind of try and do that on the forearm level instead. So I'll set this to something like this, I think. And we can go ahead and try and make a fist. So I'll just go ahead and select all of our bend objects for our fingers, and I'll head into attributes, and I'll start to try and bend them. So something like this. I don't think I want to bend them the exact same amount, actually. So I just kind of want to tweak them until I'm happy. I'll also go ahead and bend the thumb. So like this. So when we do posing like this, I sit and tweak my pose, and then I kind of like let go of my mouse and my keyboard, and then I kind of try and do the pose myself to kind of observe how my body behaves when I try and do a certain thing. So obviously we have our hand, so we can, you know, do a fist and kind of see how our thumb covers our fingers, or like how it's placed. Like our thumb right now is kind of doing this, so obviously we want to rotate it like this sort of. So just kind of be aware of that. You can let go everything and kind of like take a step back, try and see, like if you, for example, were to like raise your arm like this, what would happen to your upper body? Would your upper body twist? Like what would happen to your head? Would that also kind of tilt? These things are pretty important when you are doing poses. So, you know, always kind of stop and observe your own body, I guess. But I'll try and like rotate my thumb a bit like this. And I think we can, I'll just hop out of my camera view here just so we can see what our fingers are doing, because hand poses are always hard. It's gonna be a lot of tinkering when we are working with hands like this. So I think I'll place my thumb something like that. And I think the problem is with our fingers currently. I don't think the bend is really working, actually. So I'll kind of just try and bend them a bit less. So something like this. But I think the main problem is that the fingers are very far up on our fist. So if we just take them, select them, and we make sure that our object coordinate system is activated. So we see the fingers local axis highlighted like this. And we want to move them in this like red axis that we see, which is the x-axis. And when we try and do that, that won't work. But if we come over to our move tool and press per object transform, then we can actually move them in our local axis. So that's what we want to do. So I'll kind of just move it in this axis just to kind of see if I can make it look a bit better. I think I'll move down our middle finger as well, just to kind of achieve a good looking pose here. I think to fit our sword in there, I think we need to have them cover a bit more of our hand. So I think we'll actually make our bend a bit bigger. I know we made it smaller last time, but I mean, we all make mistakes, right? So I'll just kind of try and bend them in a way that feels good in terms of how a fist looks. So something like this feels starting to feel better. Okay, so with that, I think we can try and place our sword in there because that will affect our fist pose for sure. So we'll just take our sword null, we'll move it over here, we'll bring it down. I know that it will collide with our floor right now, but I want it to be kind of sticking into the ground. So I'll just kind of move it all the way down so it kind of fits within her hand like this. And if I want to move something, so for example, I kind of want to move, I'm happy with the height of our sword currently. So I only want to move it along the Z and the X axis. So for me to kind of deactivate the Y axis while moving it, I can just come up here and hit the Y, and that will kind of show this little lock icon. And now the Y movement axis handle is kind of grayed out. So now if I start to move it, it will only move in the Z and the X axis. So I kind of do this all the time to move things around. It just makes for a much easier placement system. But I think we can, the sword is looking pretty good in this hand. Obviously we won't have a super realistic like placement within the fist, but I mean, it's a stylized character, so we don't need that, and it will look good anyways. I can promise you that. But as I said, I think I'll need to move out our fingers just a bit. So I'll do the exact same thing as I did before. I'll make sure that the per object transform is activated, and I'll just move these in the Z like that, just so we're kind of covering a bit more of the handle like that. And I'll move down the thumb just a bit, move it out like that. Okay, we're definitely getting there. So as you can tell, our sword handle is way too short. So I'll come over to our layers, I'll unlock everything so we can edit it. I'll select our top here, and to find something within our objects panel, you can press S. So if I have the object selected here, I press S, I kind of end up where our sphere is. So I'll just move this up a bit so it's not intersecting with our fingers, and I'll do the same with the cylinder here. I'll just move this all the way up like that, which means I also have to move down our bandages like that. Okay, let's take a look at that from our camera angle. Nice. Yeah, also our sword blade is way too long, but we can easily change that. Let's just first maybe rotate the sword to an angle. Maybe I kind of think I want to see it angled something like this. That looks nice. And I'll also just come into our sword, our blade geometry here, and I'll deactivate our subdivision surface. I'll activate points mode, and then I'll hop into our front view here, select only the pieces of vertices that I need. So I'll come up to my brush selection tool, select all of these pieces, and I'll also just make sure that our move axis is set to 0% in the X. So I'll make sure that my move selection tool is activated, and then I can adjust these things. So I'll set all of these to 0. I don't need the per object transform anymore, so I'll deactivate that, and then I'll just drag this tip up just a bit. And it might be smart to also kind of shrink these down just a bit. So I'll just scale them down, drag them up, something like that. And might want to move this up a bit more. And we can come out to our perspective view, see what we've done. Great, the length of the blade is looking perfect, but with that also I'll want to adjust the height of these cuts. So I can just select our connect object that we have within our bool here. I'll go ahead and reactivate the y-axis for our movement, and then I'll just move it up in the y-axis like this to a place where I'm happy. Something like that. Great. And once we're done with editing the sword, I'll just go ahead and hide all of the unnecessary things and lock it up so we're not doing any more editing on that front anymore. And I think we maybe can tilt our hand just slightly, so it's kind of like running along the handle a bit more. So something like that. And I might want to just slightly bend my middle finger again. So something like that. We're just gonna play with the placement of all of this until we're happy. I mean, strong poses is like one of the key fundamentals to animation. So you need a good pose. Yeah, I really enjoy how the fist is looking in that kind of angle. Great. So we'll move along with our pose. As I said previously, I'm kind of seeing her standing with her right arm in this kind of shape for a very majestic, confident pose. So we can go ahead and do that. I'll start out by making the hand into a fist. We won't really be seeing this hand, so we don't need to spend as much time on the actual bending and stuff. So I'll just kind of tweak this, something like this. Obviously, if you want to make another pose, absolutely fine. Like, when it comes to poses and animation and that kind of stuff, it's all about feeling, really. You can just sit down and tweak things. There's no real solid answer to it. You just need to find the kind of aesthetic that works best for you. And I'll let the hand be like this, because we're not going to see it anyways. So I'll take our right arm, I'll rotate it down, and now I'll actually want to view this from our camera angle, because that's kind of what matters in this case. So I'll just go ahead and rotate this down. So I kind of wanted to set it somewhere around here, and I'll take her forearm after that and kind of rotate that in. And in this case, I will actually twist our hand like around 90 degrees, something like that. I probably want to rotate our forearm even further, something like that. So she's kind of like resting it on her hip. And we'll kind of try and play around with this angle. I think I want to move her arm up a bit in the local y-axis, so I'll just kind of move it up somewhere around there. I think that feels good. One thing I do realize with her left arm here is that if you do stand like this and you have this massive sword and you're feeling very confident and powerful, you kind of want to bring your chest forward. That's kind of like the natural pose, or like the natural body language that we would expect from a person standing like this. Because now she's kind of like having her shoulders right at the center of her chest, and we kind of want her to bring her chest forward just a bit. So, and we don't really have a chest controller, but what we can do is actually rotate her left arm back just a bit, so we kind of get the impression that her arm is tilted a bit further back, and that will kind of give the impression that she's feeling very powerful and big. So we'll go ahead and do that. We'll take our left arm and I'll rotate it in this x-axis, or the red handle here, something like this. And like always, we'll just play around until we feel like we have something. So viewing it from this angle, this feels much better. And I'll go ahead and lock our Y position here, and I'll kind of move the sword over so it kind of fits within her hand, something like that. And I think we can go ahead and like edit her thumb just a bit here, because it's kind of pointing up just a bit too much. I feel like her thumb will be a bit more centered around the handle. And with that, I think we can just bring the sword down just a tad, something like that. And maybe even let's take a look at the left arm here. Maybe we should move it back just a bit even. Let's try that. We'll bring the sword back into her hand to a point where it feels nice. Yeah, that's looking really good, I think. We didn't really need to do too much work for her pose. It's mostly about tinkering and kind of finding what sort of imagery works best for your vision. So in my case, I really enjoy the look that she's got right now. So with that done, we can move into the next lesson, where we'll be like finishing up our environment, and that will basically be the last stage of our design process. So that will be very exciting. And I'll see you over there.